I see.
Yeah. Go for it, Nick.
Right. Right. Well, here is a map of this is the Wash. This little bit of sea here, and this would be modern Lincolnshire, Cambridgeshire down at the bottom where Troy is. You've got Ely Cathedral. All this lot would be pretty well flooded in those days, and the rivers, the names of the rivers are all mentioned. There's 9 rivers around here, and they're all mentioned in the Iliad. Yeah. This Devil's Dyke is a structure that's about 3,000 years old, as is this dyke here.
So you're saying Troy is in Wales and not Turkey?
No, Troy is in England and not Wales.
Oh, okay.
This is Cambridge. Troy is Cambridge.
Okay.
All the battles on these rivers are described, and there are reasons. They give reasons for all this information. All these dots are names of little places and incidents that happened in the battle. That Homer recounted. What's happening here?
Oh, I hate it when that happens. Yeah.
So this is the guy. Wilkins is the archaeologist who originally uncovered this sort of stuff.
That's pretty cool. That is cool.
Yeah, and then from Troy, from the Troy Gog Magog, after 10 years of fighting, Odysseus went on his travels, and this was a travel of spiritual ascension, as well as the historian says there were 3 basic elements to the book. One of them was a map, one of them was a history, and one of them was the spiritual transformation of Achilles, his initiation. Yeah, and so basically the Cyclops, he says, are actually in Madeira or Cameroon, and Cyclops doesn't mean one-eyed giants. It means round-eyed, the round-eyed people. And although the Cyclops that captured Odysseus, of course, had one eye, they didn't all have one eye. And again, the story fits much better because the actual times it mentions how many days rowing or how many days and what direction they were getting blown in, and if you put that in the geography of the Mediterranean, it just does not add up. But if you put it on the Atlantic coast, it does. So these are pictures of modern Madeira now, and it quotes it all from the writings, and a lot of them. So many of the names all correspond of these places, and right across Europe, there are more correspondences of the names than there are in the Mediterranean. So it's pretty compelling stuff. So Corvo from Cameroon, then he gets blown to Corvo, which is in the Azores. From there to Havana, which is the gateway to the North American copper. And so that's the Las Lagunas at Cuba. And I'm very interested to tie in these Lagunas to the giants of the Midwest America, and the trade right up the Mississippi and the other rivers, coming off Alabama and etc. into the American interior.
Well, the Egyptians used boomerangs, and so did the Hopi Indians, and they used them in Australia too. So that kind of shows that there was some kind of trade going on worldwide.
Absolutely. And of course, we've got tobacco and cocaine in Egypt, haven't we?
Yep. Yeah, that's pretty good little theory. I like it. It's pretty good.
Yeah, it is. It's extensive. There are 5. They haven't actually disproved these guys all after Mate of 10 because they're this work is extensive, and they can't really argue too much against it. Although, of course, mainstream don't go with these kind of things.
Yeah,
It does.
Of course not.
It does
That
explain
means it's probably
a lot.
right.
Yeah, it explains an awful lot.
Yeah, mainstream is just a cover-up system.
It is, yeah, it is absolutely
Authoritative cover-up.
And they're actually finding, and Zarian mentioned this the other when I heard his last talk, that English, the actual English language, is far older than people think. It's not this this modern thing that's been latched together with bits of Norman and bits of this and bits of that in it. It's an ancient language, as old as the Greek and all the rest of it.
Yes, and I hear that it was created specifically for magic. A, B, C, D, abracadabra. Then you got D is the door to the ether, which is death. There's all kinds of things Christ is in the English language.
Yeah,
in the alphabet.
It seems to correspond a lot with the ancient Egypt stuff as well, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's Unclish. That's how it started. Yeah.
Well,
that's according to Santos.
Well,
I got a little spot on that.
According to the Eralinda book, the English Angles.
Yes, Angles. Yeah, that's it.
The
that
Angles.
Might be where the Ankh come from too.
Well, according to the Eralinda book, the Angles were simply people who fished. They fished not using nets but using lines and hooks, as in modern angling, and this is an ancient tradition in England, and I think that's where these fishermen who could fish with lines and hooks.
So how did they become Anglo-Saxon? They joined. There used to be the Angles and the Saxons.
Well, the
Britons.
Well, the Saxons again. It's pointed out. It's the 6. It's the number 6 is the Saxon. So there were 6 tribes, and this is pointed out in Atlantic theory because it's always 6 people who get swiped off the ship with a skillet and Charybdis, 6 people who get slaughtered off the Cyclops, 6 this and 6 ships go down here, and so they're always referencing Saxon, the 6 ones, and so yeah, and so the Saxons were actually, like I said, 6 different tribes who were called the 6 wherever they went, and these were the originators of the Lystragones, according to these guys' theories. For example, you've got the Olmecs in Mexico. Yeah. Now, home in European, you've got Stockholm, Axholm, lots of things, words with home, which means island in European. And so you've got the Olmecs. although holmos means a round stone in Greek, so that's a possible derivation. But the Olmecs, we think, these kind of African-looking guys, we think were probably of Northern European origin. If it was Holmecs rather than Olmecs, but that's just these words that pop up, and which they're very aware of. But there's also modern evidence that pops up to support these theories. For example, recently we've dug up a stone in Cuba which has got Linear B inscriptions on it, 1500 BC, Celto-Iberian writing. So we've got examples of that now. We've got examples of the Lion Man, of Hercules, and we know this is incredible, because in the Erlinda book, they mention a trip down the Rhine to Switzerland, what's now Switzerland, Olympus, the home Mont Blanc being Mount Olympus, and in Switzerland, the people lived on these in settlements in the middle of the lakes, on these houses built on poles, and in one of these settlements they found the Lion Man, Hercules. Now, this is mentioned in the Erlinda book as happening 1000 BC, and then it wasn't until maybe 100 years ago that they found the Lion Man in exactly the place where what they were talking about in the book. So it looks like Hercules might have been a Swiss guy. Fantastic.
Swissy.
Yeah,
he was a Swissy.
a Swisser.
Yeah.
Schweizer.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
so
something funny about the Swiss, man.
yeah, so
Nobody
I mean,
ever messes with them.
well, it all locks together, you know. When you look at all this, it's absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting, I have to say.
Yeah.
That's pretty good. Thank you for that, filling us in on that. That's pretty good, man.
Well, it's coming your way, Greg. Your way, Greg, because there are shores and shores, and it all ties in with the Pelasgian research. All this lot, you know.
Oh, okay, that's good. Yeah, well, Homer, he's got a little bit of everything in his stuff.
Well, he's got a lot more than what we even know, you know. He talks about all the different tree types that they use for building stuff with. Notably, if you go to war, you've got a spear made out of an ash pole, bronze shod ash. I don't know if you get any ash trees in Greece. I'm not sure you do. The next favourite tree is the oak tree. That's what they build all the boats and ships out of. Again, I don't know if you get any in Greece. Pitch is something that we get out of various trees in our British forest that I don't know if you get in Greece, and that was essential for boat building.
I see. Yeah,
they're all black hulled ships.
It would make more sense, you know.
And so there are all these arguments that add up and add up and add up.
Yeah.
And then of course when you've got the Sirens at Tenedos at the Isle of Thanet, Sculla and Charybdis at St Michael's Mount just off the Cornish coast, Thrinacia, Cornwall itself, or maybe my spot in Devon, Ogygia, the Azores, that's where Calypso lived, Scheria, Lanzarote, and then Ithaca, where Odysseus left Penelope, his homeland in Cadiz, Jerez, Ithaca. And so these are far better candidates than all the Greek ones that have disappeared and you can't find any. Yeah. These are far better candidates. And so it's there's there's books and books of stuff to go out here. It's fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
And linking them up with the modern names is just so exciting. Really is.
Yeah. Like what?
Well, let me see what they say in. See what they say about Troy, Gog, Magog.
Yeah, that's a giant name, isn't it?
Yeah, they were giants that also popped up in the Bible.
Mm-hmm.
All right, we've got a preface here. I'll just read a bit of this out. This is the first edition of a translation and commentary on Homer's Odyssey, based on the so-called Atlantic theory that has been developed from the 19th century up to now by the ideas of de Graaf, Calo, Gideon, and Wilkins, who, being not satisfied with the traditional interpretation of Homer, scrupulously scrutinized all geographical, meteorological, nautical, and cultural details of Ilias and Odyssey, and looked for incongruities in the traditional paradigm that are based on beliefs and dogmas instead of on rational arguments. They proved that Troy could not have stood in Turkey. Achaeans, Danaans, Archaeans are not the same as Greeks. Odysseus could never have been wandering for 10 years in the Mediterranean. On the basis of these conclusions, the authors looked for the right setting and the correct geography of Homer, using all kinds of arguments and secondary evidence. Thereby, we have to consider that as far as the Bronze Age, Homeric backgrounds and the search for the real scene are concerned, nothing is certain. Meanwhile, of simple Homeric works, words are uncertain, let alone religious ideas and rites. Archaeology can help us little as far as the material part of Bronze Age is concerned, but falls short in explaining philosophical, social, and religious backgrounds. Therefore, this edition has no intention to settle any truth or create a new dogma, but will try to find possible solutions based on a cohesive theory about culture, religion, and history, applicable to all details of Homer's texts. For example, the words ambrosia and nectar, which are used for the food of the gods and of the horses of Poseidon, have never been well explained. We don't know what this food was like. One cannot find it in museums. However, Calo developed a coherent theory about the primordial Gallo-German religion, giving a central place to concepts of mummification, rebirth, and reincarnation that can be traced down everywhere in Homer. People use tar and amber for mummification. So are these materials somehow connected with the words ambrosia and nectar, derived from nectar equals corpse tar? We know from recent discoveries that tar was already known in the Stone Age, produced by heated beech bark, while amber has been found in big quantities along the shores of the Baltic and North Sea.
Yeah.
Of course, this is only a theory and other solutions are possible, but so far is this the only logical and valid theory ever produced.
You know, in the history of electromagnetism, the very first association with any kind of reaction that people got were with amber. They could move little charges, move pieces of paper around and stuff. You know, it was just a novelty at that time.
It's fantastic that insects are kind of buried in this stuff and preserved perfectly, isn't it, as well?
Yeah. Amber's quite unique, for sure.
Yeah. So now it talks a little bit about the Celts anyway after that, Greg.
Yeah, go on. It's interesting. Go on.
Right. Well, the Celts. All Atlantic authors use the name Celts or Proto-Celts for the inhabitants of the regions, because Homer himself calls the very famous mother of the Celts by name, Galathea. Some archaeologists say, however, that this name cannot be used before the Hallstatt period, 800 to 500 BC, for the Bronze Age civilization, while others like to call all Bronze Age Urnfield cultures Celtic. To avoid this kind of difficulties, I use the name Gallo-German for the civilization of Western and Northern Europe, starting from the Neolithic onwards. Calo and Wilkins draw attention to the enormous technical knowledge of the Gallo-Germans possessed in the field of shipbuilding, weaponry, battle cars, roads, agricultural instruments, salt exploitation, mining, etc., of which several elements are mentioned passingly and as a matter of fact by Homer, but bear witness of a very well-developed society. This is our Western civilization of millennia ago. The Homeric heroes are our ancestors. And then it goes in, there's chapters on why Hisarlik is not Troy. The region of Phrygia, Friesland, they all come from the same root. Friesland, which is the home of the English, well, the pre-English English, on the Belgian-Dutch coast. Nine Rivers. This is a fascinating thing, because again, the Erlinda book talks about the Nile Hellenia, which is the nine. It's the muses, the nine muses.
Okay, yes. This sounds more Greek,
Yeah. Well, it's not Greek. It's like I said, it became Greek. It became Greek after about 1200, after a number of thousands of years not being Greek.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me. They stole their mythology from the Plestians, so.
Well, it's also looking now that the Greek, the linear A Greek writing that we can translate, as an antecedent in the Coelbren.
How do the Hellenes come into it?
Sorry?
How do the Hellenes come into it?
Hellenes. Well, this is described quite wide, thoroughly in this book.
Good, yeah. You get the Britons too, right?
Yeah. Well, Holland, Hellas, Holland, and it means the bright people, bright-eyed people, maybe.
Okay.
Which they're always going on about. They seem to describe people by their eye shape rather than by their colour, which is an interesting thing.
Yeah, it is.
Right, so here we are, the Nine Rivers.
And Nick, I think we still do, in a roundabout way, make our opinion of people often on your first opinion by that eye-to-eye contact.
Yeah, sure. That's right.
It's ingrained somewhere.
Yeah, that's right. You might say, oh, in with that bug-eyed bloke, or that bloke with the beady eyes, or,
Yeah, and there's a lot of information around about how our eyes are different from most other creatures on this planet, and you have some insects with some really different eye systems too, what they see, feel. So your eyes, I think, are for a lot more than just seeing.
Well, they
But I always
probably are,
like when you're talking about, the UK, England, because when you look at it for size, like, geez, for a long time it's punched above its weight. The Romans couldn't get a foothold in until they got invited. But I have noticed, and you can't correct me if I'm not, if you don't believe I'm right, a lot of our English cuisine and German cuisine, older, going back, has a lot of similarities.
Oh, yeah, well, totally. The cuisine is very interesting because of course the it took the original Irish, for example, uh, they weren't tolerant to milk. It took
Yeah.
it took a European influence, which probably came in somewhere from Russia, originally, to bring the milk,
Ah, yes.
the actual gene where we can process milk, effectively. Most people were milk intolerant,
A
and
lot of Asian people still are.
yeah, yeah, and so this created the massive cultural differences because rather than killing the beef animals all every year, of course they could keep the females for 3 years and live perfectly well off the milk in form of butter and cheese, and just throw a few local herbs in and you've got a great diet, a really good diet. These guys are
Yep.
going to get fit and big, and
Yep.
and that's and of course they've got all the bronze they need for the weapons industry. We've always loved the weapons industry in this country, and so not only were the British noted for fighting on chariots, which is the ancient Greek way of doing it. Well, it isn't. It's the British way that the Greeks adopted. Or the Northern European. I'll be generous and
Yep.
give the Belgians and Dutch some credit as well, and of course the Germans. Um, but when you look at the I'll just talk about these rivers. Um, um, the Hellespontus, for example. Um, let's have a look. The Hellespont. The Achaean camp near Troy lies, according to Homer, at the wide gulf of the Hellespontus and the ocean, not on the Aegean shores, the Dardanelles, called Hellespontus by the Greeks, from a narrow channel, and aren't the immeasurable endless water masses of Homer. This sea is called the Thracian Sea. Thrace to the north of Greece was not called Thrace in Homeric times, because this region had not yet been colonized by Gallo-Germans. Thereby, Thrace is an Atlantic name, because Thrake is one of Okeanos' daughters. Achilles sees the sun rising near his tents above the ocean, which means that his camp must overlook an eastern ocean, not a western Aegean Sea. You see? That's just one example. The 9 rivers. Homer tells us how Poseidon and Apollo let 8 rivers that flow from the Ida hills towards the sea hit against the Achaean camp walls for 9 days in a row, so that eventually it was level to the ground. The names of these rivers are Rhesos, Heptaporos, Charissos, Rhodios, Granikos, Isopos, Scamander, and Simois. A 9th river, Sant Neois, oh, Jesus, didn't have his source at Ida and had no part in the destruction. These rivers are called big, broadly streaming with deep flood streams, and the Scamander is deeper than the great hero Achilles is tall. One glance on the map of the Bay of Hissarlik shows that there are no 9 big, deep rivers around, and none flowing in the Bessica Bay, and certainly no tidal rivers. The so-called Scamander in Turkey had, during the visit of Xerxes and his army, not even enough water for his horses. In summer, the river is dry. In winter, there is even not enough water for a goose to swim in. This argument is so strong that one can say that the person who finds these 9 rivers around a Bronze Age settlement anywhere in Europe automatically has discovered the battlefield of the Trojan War. In Italy, no traces have been found of a major long-term war. No enormous hordes of bronze swords, horse bits, chariot parts, etc., as have been found on the plain of the Wash along the Cam, the former Scamander. Tides and currents. From several explicit clauses in Homer, we can deduce that the ocean has currents and tidal movements. Implicitly, he tells us so in the story of Nausicaa, putting the freshly washed clothes on the pebbles to dry. There the sea washes the pebbles continually clean onto the land, which can only mean that the sea at high tide washes the pebbles clean, up to many meters, in any case enough to spread all the clothes on the pebbles. This would be impossible on the 10 centimeters ebb and flood difference between normal in the Mediterranean. At low tide, the clothes can be put on the pebbles that in the meantime have been dried up by the sun. Explicitly, chapter 15 has 3 terms that are only applicable to the ocean. Okeanos apsoroos, ocean with the ebb current, ruos, okeanou, currents of the ocean, aspitos, or he flowed endlessly, rian aspitos. Another interesting clause, they cleared the traction gutters to pull and push the huge seaworthy Achaean vessels into the ocean. Evidently the Achaeans had parked their ships as high as possible on the beach, using dugout gutters to help them pull the ships ashore and again into the sea. They had to make use of high tide, even spring tide. We read that Achilles, together with many Myrmidonians, was lying on the beach of the loudly roaring sea, crying his heart out, on a clean spot, where the tidal waves always washed the sand. Here too it is obvious that so many men couldn't lie on a 10 centimetre wide strip of Mediterranean sand. The iterative form klutsikon, washes, always indicates the repeated process of tides. This 8th argument is also very strong. The Mediterranean has neither currents nor the tides of any significance, except for the narrow straits like Gibraltar and Bosporus. This is irrefutable evidence for the Atlantic setting of Ilias and Odyssey. So it goes on and on with these arguments. I can't wait till you read it all, Greg, because it puts the Greek stuff in a really new context. It's fantastic. Right, I'm going to carry on reading, seeing as everyone's disappeared.
No, I was waiting for Greg to answer here, Nick.
Okay, mate.
I was waiting for Greg to answer, but he never.
It's all right. He'll go making a coffee. I can't blame him.
What? I'm here.
No,
I'm here.
that's here he is. Speak of the devil, we fired him up.
Here he is.
Yeah.
I was just listening, man. It was
Okay. You enjoying it, Greg? It's okay.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Okay. Good.
Yeah.
Right. Are there Homeric clauses that confirm the identifications?
So what would you say, Nick, before you go any further, those 9 rivers are they talk about in today's world?
Do they have the same
Because they
names?
have them old names. No, I don't think so.
Well, the non, N-O-N, describes 9 normally. N-O-N.
Yeah.
That describes the number 9.
The tides and they talk about the tides and the stronger, and you get strong tides and strong current.
Yeah.
And you get a lot of pebbles, right?
Yeah.
And that to me is talking about the English Channel, not around in the Mediterranean.
It is totally, because you don't get tides down there in the Mediterranean. I mean, I've slept on the beach in Greece, and the tide only comes up about a foot, like he says, 10 centimeters. It's you get drowned if you did that on it in Britain.
Yeah, and the English Channel, it has, like we know, it does have fairly strong, very often very strong currents, and it
Yeah.
can have some really good tides too, because that's a lot of what's shaped England in recent years, recent time. Yeah,
It's got
so
massive tides, massive tides.
Yes, yes. That's why, and we know too that channel system, all right, now it's a lot bigger now to what it possibly was back then. That channel system through there, that has a lot to do with the weather for all that northern part of Europe.
Yeah, and
everybody's their weather.
He describes the weather. He's always describing the weather, Homer. He's always describing the winds, where it's blowing from, where to. He describes. He always describes a cold grey sea, never a blue shiny sea. It's always grey or green, which is the case normally around our way, especially down Thanet and that eastern side down there. Where he thinks Sculla and Charybdis is off the Isle of Thanet, Tenedos, which was one of the Isles of the Dead, where sort of Odysseus visited. So yeah, and just the.
There are many people who say flamenco is one of them. That all of that past that Greece claims to have, there is just made up.
Totally.
They even
and so
imported,
is the English past. It does.
Yeah.
It makes sense. And in a little bit,
it's quite possibility that they were an opportunistic group.
Yeah.
So, in other words, they seen somebody doing something and copied it.
Yes.
And they continued to do that.
They're real good.
Yeah, and they continued to do that, and that gave them a really good living environment for a long time. And then, what was I listening to the other day? They were talking about it, where when it actually came time that the others started, hey, hang on a minute, and took to them, well, they weren't up to standard to be able to fight wars and things like that. So their vulnerability was that they couldn't fight, but their ability was that they could copy quickly.
Mm-hmm.
Agree with that, Nick?
Well, yeah. If you look at the names of all the sea peoples that the Ramesses II lists, all these names fall out. All these names fall out of this Atlantic theory, and I'll illustrate this in a bit. The Weshesh, the Peliset, all of them fall out of the Atlantic theory directly from it, and it's the presidents. It's exactly the same system as what was happening in the Crusades. These were financial forays. They were going for money.
Yeah.
They were going for wealth and slaves.
Well, money was created to keep people in their place. If it wasn't for money, there wouldn't be a high class and a low class. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Well, money possibly for all its bad things. For all its bad things, it's possibly one of the things that have allowed humans to advance over time. And what you're talking about now, Nick, is we're talking about previous advances where we've had great civilizations, only for some reason them to fall back, right? And when you look at it, it's always often around they had a monetary system that worked for so long, and then often it was a combination of it got corrupted, plus you had outside things like earthquakes, volcanoes, and all that happening, and you ended up with food shortages as well. And you ended up losing tradespeople, and within 100 years, their systems collapsed.
Yeah, except these systems seem to have been operating for over 1,000 years.
Yes.
very very highly
They're probably still
organized and
running.
stable systems.
Probably
If you
still running things.
Prince Nestor, who was I think he was one of the old men, Achilles, one of his old friends. He was bragging that he'd on one of his campaigns he'd stolen like 1,500 sheep, 500 cows, and a few horses, and this was his one of his greatest sort of victories in life, really. That he managed to pull off this raid.
So he's an animal thief. Should be hung.
Well, they all were. That's what they did. They
Yeah.
went. They found the king next door to him who was weaker, and they would go
Lynch.
on. They'd go and get him. Yeah, which is what they decided to do with King Priam, because he was controlling the tin and the copper business, and they were exceedingly wealthy.
Even back then. Even back then.
Yeah,
Jeez. Wow.
and so it makes a lot more sense, because there's no tin in pig in Troy. They wouldn't have a Hisarlik in Troy. Didn't have any reason to be a massive nine, what is it, many towered Troy in Hisarlik. It's about the size of a little one horse town in Arizona. It's got there's nothing in it. It could have only fit a few hundred people in, whereas there were thousands and thousands who lived in Troy. And if you look at the old Bronze Age maps of the area, you can see where the settlements were. Quite amazing.
What about that monument, that mound? It's like something berry.
Avebury.
Yeah. But does that come from around there too, that period, or was that
No,
built around that time? No, more
no.
ancient.
Um, prob-
Isn't there another theory saying that most of the religions came from the Druids?
certainly the Druids arrived, and this is all part of the history, the history of Brutus. But um, the Druids arrived in the 500 BC Brutus
And they
invasion.
were completely benevolent, right?
Well, there were three sons of this. There were three sons of this particular king, and it might have been Brutus. One was called Magus, one was called Druids, and one was called Bardos. So you got the magicians, the Druids, and the bards were successive. The people from successive rulers.
Now, a
These,
bard, what was a bard? Like a traveling musician that
yeah,
sang myths?
they were the messengers. They recorded all
Right,
history.
right.
They memorized all the names of every person.
And
Uh,
lyrics, yes.
and they would travel around disseminating information throughout the land.
That's pretty
Accord,
cool. Yeah.
yeah.
There probably was a good size of them were tricksters too.
Well, they'd actually be if they'd actually be killed pretty fast if they were illegitimate. They'd come
So
to a sticky
people
end
would
pretty
know it.
quick.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Because they weren't allowed to go to war, so they had the benefits of not getting killed in battle,
So
but they had to provide other very very strict social functions.
who
Um,
started taking out the Druids? I mean, somebody eliminated them, right?
well, the Romans. It was very
The
important to
Romans.
the Romans
Mhm.
to kill them, because that was the source of all the hidden knowledge.
Like their competition, yeah.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
And they didn't manage to do it, although they thought they'd killed them all. They hadn't, because there's still Druids, obviously, who've carried the traditions through, as far as they understand it. From what has been left, because of course, throughout history, anyone who's dissented the normal biblical view, they've they burnt them pretty fast, you know. Like all the witches, they used to use herbal medicines, and you know, had fantastic herbal law, and
Oh
so
yeah, I bet.
you'd go to them if you had a wound and you needed healing or whatever,
Right. Yeah.
and this was just looked at as witchcraft, and then they'd burn these people
Yeah.
because they provided a religious and
Yes. Yes.
service, you know.
Something real.
Yeah, something
Yeah.
real.
Holistic. You know, it's herbalism. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
And they still use herbs today in medications.
Well, it's the only stuff I'd use,
Yep.
particularly, you
Yep.
know, because I don't trust doctors at all.
Yeah. Pharma don't like, you know, even though they rip it off and try to copy it, big pharma don't like herbs. Huh.
No, they don't. They
No,
don't like it at all.
no.
Um, it's what they're trying to do with cannabis at the moment. They're trying to make that into 500 different types of drugs, and
Hmm.
obviously licensed at massive money.
Yeah.
But no, I think I'll stick with the real deal.
I think it's pretty cool what Michigan did. They let mom and pop stores pop up all over. Watched how they did their business, then closed them down and opened up state-run stores. You can
Yeah,
only get it. It's only state-run now.
really.
Yeah, yeah. That's just like you're a gangster, you know. We have a gangster state now. They're pretty much all
Well,
over the world.
well, you look at our glorious prime ministers over the last 10 years. Um, Theresa May's husband had I think 200 acres of land quite near Cambridgeshire, growing cannabis
Hmm.
for the pharmaceutical industry. We understand, you know, not for any other motive, but to help people medicinally, you know. Theresa May was one. Um, um, there have been there's a number of these really plum in the mouth Tory politicians who grow cannabis, but would rather see a cannabis smoker do 10 years in prison.
Yeah, it's
Wankers.
ridiculous.
So
Ridiculous.
excuse me. Yeah. So there we are, and we all know what the scam is now. It's the same with oil. It's the same reason they won't let us burn hydrogen,
Right.
because they want us to have battles over oil and then spend millions on their weapon systems, billions on their oil.
Yeah,
Which is,
no doubt. You know, it's just ridiculous.
yeah,
You know.
and it's coming to a head now, because next winter we're not going to pay these gas prices to keep warm. We can't afford it.
Well, I noticed they've come down a little bit over here.
Have they really?
Yeah, they came
Oh,
down a little bit.
Biden must have bought some Russian oil, no doubt. He's probably bought a few
No,
billion
no,
gallons to keep you going.
Nick, he's been released out of the strategic reserve, which
Oh,
means,
yeah, that's the
Uh,
one, isn't it? Yeah,
yeah,
I
which
heard
gives them
that.
strategic reserves.
which allows them time to be bought.
Yeah.
Doesn't fix the problem, does it?
Oh, guess what, Greg? Anyway, I went down to see my controller at the, I'm on this universal credit job. So she's actually quite a nice lady, this one. Um, and she's recommended that, she's told me I've got to apply for a couple of jobs.
Okay.
Um,
Okay.
and these are civil service jobs, they are.
Mhm.
Could you imagine me in civil service? It's the Office of National Statistics, and they want me to write some neural networks, um, potentially. So they're actually pretty well paying jobs, these. Um, and so I've been a bit preoccupied with trying to get this sorted out, you know.
Yeah,
Uh,
I know another buddy who of mine who took a job with this new kind of thing they got going on over here. The business is called Grubhub, where people order anything they want from any restaurant they want, and the people who work for it get a text, and if you got like 2 minutes to answer it that you want to do it, you'll do it. You take the food, you go pick it up from the fast food or whatever it is they got, and take it to them for a 20% tip. And he's making pretty good money, he says.
Yeah, yeah. They all do it round nowhere now, Greg. Since this lockdown came in, it's all about you just ring it up on your phone, and some guy will drive it around in half an hour. Round
Yeah,
to your
yeah,
house.
yeah. You have to pay through the nose for it, but it's pretty cool. It's like having curb service at home.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Yeah,
Yeah.
um, yeah. So I've been a bit pretty busy with this, and uh, it'll be interesting if I get one of these jobs, because they don't have to pay through the nose.
Yeah.
With this one of them, it's only starts. It's about 23,000 a year for 3 years.
Yeah.
Then they give you a degree at the end of three years.
Hmm.
Plus you've earned like 70 grand, and then after that 3 years, then you're on 62,000 a year.
Mm.
So you're starting to get into the decent money, and I can
Yeah.
do it all. I can do all this from working from home, Greg.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah,
hey, turn me on to it. I
I
want to
know.
see it. I need to make some
Uh,
extra money.
I'll give you all the job, fellas. You can
Yeah.
all come and work for the British government. That'd be
Maybe
good
they got
money.
an American version
I'm sure they have.
of it.
Yeah, I'm sure they have.
Well,
Well,
let's
they
say
need workers now that are out of Brexit. That they've got no one coming across the channel.
let's
Greg.
wrap
I
this
mean,
up on the Atlantic theory. But thanks for filling us in on that, Nick. And we
Yeah,
could
it's good.
stop this recording. It'd be about an hour because we got some of the other one too. So is there anything more you want to add on this?
No, I'm just happy to be chatting with you guys. I haven't had a chat with you for ages, Greg. Um,
Yeah. Well, I was just saying, do you think we should let it go, or do you think that we should stop it if we're just going to talk about, regular stuff? I'd like to give a big thank you to Edusa for filling us in on the Atlantic theory, and to Grouch for helping out with the co-hosting duties. I hope you enjoy it, and let me know your thoughts. Put them in the comment. Please like, share, comment, donate if you can. So until next time, take care. I'll see you on down the road.